Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the bonus episode / special episode of The Sandman. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I thought it was a very beautiful and touching episode, especially because it's very reminiscent. It's not the same thing. It's actually kind of on the opposite end of it, really, but it gives you the same energy as like her part of the episode 6 in season 1, because like the first half is about her, the second half is about Hob. But yeah, it's just kind of an interesting thing. Obviously we get introduced to Sexton on the day he's planning on killing himself. I think it's interesting because obviously this is a storyline from the comics, because it revolves around, well, not this specific storyline. Well, maybe certain elements of it, maybe. Definitely the death, like being human, like once every 100 years is a storyline element. But like the Sexton of it all, like that might be just something, that might be something they made for the show. Once again, not having not read the comics, I don't know that. I just went on a little bit of a deep dive, Sandman-wise, post, the series finale and everything. So, but the reason why I think it's so interesting is because there is like 3 times throughout the episode you'll see Superman stuff. Like he has a cup that's got Superman on it. At the end of the episode there's like 1 or 2 glasses that have Superman, and he comes across the House of L symbol, which is the symbol for hope. And the reason why I think that's so pertinent, especially considering, well, first and foremost, the mindset that Sexton was in, kind of being in very a doom and gloom aspect of the world, which we'll kind of get to that in a second. Him kind of wanting to give up, and the Superman sigil, the House of L sigil being, hey, it's all about hope. So that's a nice parallel, but also, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there is a specific Superman storyline where Superman just talks to someone that's trying to kill themselves. I believe it's a woman, but I could be mistaken. I'm pretty sure that's a storyline. I don't think I'm making that up, because I believe I had the same conversation during season 3 episode 2 of The Boys, because they did like the Boys version of the storyline, and obviously you know who the Superman parallel is in that universe, so you can only assume how that storyline plays out. So it's kind of interesting that we kind of have that a little bit. I want to say Superman and Lois kind of did a slight version of that in season 3, but it was like Lois that talked someone down instead of Superman. But either way, it's just, I think that's also what that's supposed to be. It's kind of interesting because I feel like this is the most overt DC stuff they've ever put in the show. Because early on in the comic, I know that like from like maybe 89 to maybe 90, maybe a little later, that they were heavily intermingled. Like characters like Martian Manhunter popped up in the story and stuff like that. But as the series went on, they kind of distanced themselves from each other. And so this adaptation kind of doesn't really, even though characters like Lyta and apparently Hector are DC characters outside of just being Sandman characters. In fact, Matthew was a DC character before like being folded into Sandman as Matthew the Raven. Like his character from DC was brought into the story to die and become Matthew the Raven. Once again, I legitimately went on a deep dive because I wasn't worried about spoilers since most of the story was told through the adaptation, so I didn't have to worry about that. But either way, I just think, like I said, there's just interesting layers to that of just like, oh, like this is kind of them kind of like putting a little bit more DC back into it, but also it's pertinent to the story. I mean, truth be told is, I mean, only character that was like DC like proper that's in this that, still very much them, even though, it's a gender swap situation. It's the Constantine, as this show would say. Once again, I'm still in my head thinking Constantine, but yeah, that's like the most DC character who's still them for the most part. Without having the DC of them removed is kind of what I'm getting at. So either way, I'm sorry I'm going on a tangent. I will go on one more tangent. I think it's kind of interesting. Obviously, Sexton is played by Colin Morgan. My introduction to him, funny enough, was in the TV show Merlin. Great TV show. Highly recommend you check it out. It's Merlin from like the Arthurian lore stories of Merlin. It's that. About Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and stuff like that. But obviously, it's like the story is mainly told from Merlin's perspective. He's your point of view, your main character. Either way, what's interesting though is 2 of his co-stars from that would eventually be in other DC shows, because these are like Merlin's from like quite a few years ago, maybe 2009 to 2014, 2015, something like that. The actor, who I can't think of his name off the top of my head, who played Arthur, was in a few episodes of iZombie. iZombie is based on a comic book of the same name, which is a Vertigo comic, which this originally, or this was as well. So it's kind of interesting. But also, is it Morgana or just Morgan? I think it's Morgana. Is played by Katie McGrath in that show, and she would later on be in Supergirl playing Lena Luthor for like 75% of the show. So it's just, once again, just funny, like those, I like connecting dots between actors. I'm like, oh, I think that's kind of funny that y'all end up in like DC properties at very different points in your careers at very different point in time, but it's just kind of funny to think about. Either way, once again, tangents and all that aside, getting into the episode itself, because initially you're thinking that Sexton might be trying to off himself because of his, it seems like he went through a breakup with his girlfriend Sylvie, and he's trying to tell her like, no, it's not because of you, but we find out it's because Sexton is a journalist, and he believes in like, he sees like how the world is ending, like there's so much terrible stuff ending in the world, pollution, this and that, and though he has a very dour look on the has a very dour outlook on the world, and it kind of leads to him just, you know, kind of wanting to take himself out, and I think that's kind of what led to him and Sylvie breaking up, is him just having such a, hey, I get it. I have a very pessimistic view as well. And I think that's such an interesting aspect of this, of someone who has such a pessimistic view, kind of seeing the brighter spots in life when all you ever can really see, sadly, are the dark spots, you know? And so when he's at his low, you know, and he, you know, slips and falls, who's there to help him? Death. And I love that she had her hand out. She's like, ooh, sorry, my day off. Because I think she had that knee-jerk reaction of like, wait, it's not my time to take, oh, right, it's my day off. I don't have to worry about that. You know, so every 100 years she gets a single day off, gets to live as a human. Like I said, I think the timing's interesting because I just did a deep dive like a couple days ago. I had no idea that's what this episode was going to be about. But yeah, just funny. Like I said, I literally came across like a Wikipedia article talking about this freaking like particular storyline in particular either way. And so it's her inviting Sexton over, and you know, it's like, oh, do you hear that? He's like, the traffic? She's like, yeah, it's great. Isn't that part of what's the point of living in London? Because he's kind of like, I don't know you. You're kind of, you know, because for him, he seems like, oh, this oddball woman's like, who am I really just gonna follow this oddball woman to her place? And even she's like, oh yeah, like, because her place manifests itself like that, even when she's deaf, because she brought Orpheus here in episode 5 of this season, and her place looked like that. And I was like, oh, I think it's kind of interesting. But she's like, her place, it's like the universe's way to kind of make her feel comfortable in her time as a human. I wonder who she made this deal with. Like, maybe it's just kind of like, maybe it's a deal she struck with being as Death at the Endless. She's able to automatically have this deal. It's just baked into her existence. Or does she have to like speak to a higher power like God, or not unless she talks to her mom and dad about it. Like, that might be kind of, because I mean, you know, the only one of the siblings who never visit mom and dad and talk to them at all was Destiny. Well, no, because Destiny visits their mom, but he doesn't really visit the dad, I believe, because he has kind of all he needs with the book and stuff. So, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's not really important, but it's kind of, you know, a thing to know about her character that it's baked in there. But either way, which actually kind of gets me thinking about the ending. I want to talk about it now just because I don't want to end up forgetting it when the time comes. But I think it's so interesting. Like, I guess, like, even though she says it's like my day off, but it's not really her day off. Like, I guess there's too many different ways to interpret that ending. It could either be like, Death basically splits her existence. Like, there is her who's just occupying, like, her doing her function as Death, and then there's a part of her like consciousness that's split into a human form and given life to do what she wants to. And then when it's all said and done, both existences come together, so she gets all the memories of that version. Like, she kind of creates a clone as doppelganger of herself to kind of live as a human. I guess that's one way of looking at it, that she kind of has to come and basically claim herself in a way. I mean, I feel like that's how I'm interpreting it. Like I said, I think there's other ways you can interpret that too, but either way, get into the episode. Obviously she's reluctant to reveal who she is. Every time you know, like what she comes up, she's like, and what's your name? And it's like, okay, you're not going to believe me. And she's like, oh, go ahead. And she's like, I'm deaf. He's like, you're deaf. She's like, yeah, but like, it's my day off. Get one every 100 years. So oh, do you want tea? And he's like, oh, thanks for the tea, thanks for that, because she knows exactly who he is. And he's like, wait, you know you read my column? Because she's like, yes. He's like, how do you know I'm a columnist? She's like, there's only one Sexton, was it Furnival? He's like, yeah, blame my parents for that name. And he's like kind of creeped out by it, and he's got to leave. I almost expected like when he left that the building would disappear, because I didn't know the episode would kind of revolve around what it ultimately ends up being. But when he goes outside and trips, I'm like, what the hell is this about? And then Hetty shows up. I'm like, what are you doing here? Breaking a bottle, threatening him to go back up to see Death. And it's because Death's like, I guess because she knows like Death isn't going to just want some random guy getting killed, especially on her day off. But even though it technically, well, once again, based on the ending, isn't her day off, but maybe it is. I don't know. Because I think, I mean, to be fair, they fulfill their functions, but they aren't like the pure personification of things. Like, so Death is still going to happen even if she's not there, but just like destruction still happens even without destruction being out and about, and in direct connection with the destruction, it still happens. He's just not there he's no longer the overseer of it. So I guess that's another aspect of it. But it's like, yeah, you don't want someone kind of dying on your day off because you won't technically be there to kind of give them a helping hand. I guess you could almost look at it as like, well, it's like, I don't think she doesn't really have a soul because she's one of the in-laws. So either way, like I said, my brain, I'm kind of getting distracted. Either way. So Hetty's like, okay, I'm looking for my soul. She's like, I hid it from you but the problem is like, I don't know if it's a byproduct of just living as long as she has, where it's like, I get a little mad sometimes in the regards of like, I kind of get a little scatterbrained and like, I don't remember where I hid it in. And Death's like, okay, I'll find it for you. And I mean, also that's just Death being Death, that she's just, very nice like that. So, and I love that it's just like, oh, cool. So we can't go back to Death's place because that lady's there. It's like, aren't you going to call the cops? It's like, why? I made a promise to her, like, because she knows, like, Hetty, and it's like, yeah, they have history and stuff like that. She has history with her and her siblings. So it's like, yeah, I know her. So, I'm going to help look for her soul. And, this aspect of her, like, it being her lucky day that everything kind of goes well for her. It's like, oh, the guy gives her a veggie wrap and he's like, oh, have you heard about the monk who ordered one? He's like, and she's like, oh, I hadn't heard that one before. Oh my God, this is the best thing ever, because it's like all, as she says, it's like she's basically a newborn. So it's like she gets experiencing all this for the first time, because every time she's living, it's in a different era. And so she's experiencing things she only gets to experience once every 100 years. So you kind of get to embrace and take in every aspect of life, which is kind of beautiful, kind of experiencing so much for the first time. Because yes, you have your memories of probably doing it in the previous 100 years or the 100 years before that and so on and so forth, right? But it's not the same when it's just like a different area. It's a different experience. It's different people. The people are different. The experiences are different, So it's like, yes, he can't go back to his place because Billy and Amelia are most likely shagging. And it's like, oh, that's nice of you to kind of give them the space to kind of like have sex and do all that. But then they get into a cab, and I thought that was so beautiful, where he's like, I want to go home. And it's like, oh, where's home? It's like, well, his friend is like having sex with a girlfriend. It's like, oh, that's cool. So he wants to go home, but he can't really go home right now. So Death asks the lady who's the taxi driver, like, where do you want to take us? She's like, oh, if it was me, I could give you guys a drive through the park. And they go, and I think it's really neat. It's like, oh, like, what do you think is like the best, like, worth living element of living? And for her, it's like when she's done with the night shift and then the sun is just about to come up. Because for her, it's like in that one moment, it feels like everything is possible, because it feels like London is just mine. Because I think you have that sweet spot between that shift over from night where everything's quiet until like, because those are dope people who have the night shift are going to sleep. Those who are getting up are about to get up. So you have that sweet spot moment where it kind of feels like all of, specifically London. So I get that mentality. I think that's a very beautiful perspective on life. And obviously, like, I forgot, it was a very like sarcastic answer that Sexton gave, because he's just like, And there was actually like a club that him and Sylvie go to or went to, and it's like he doesn't really go because it's like it's not really his scene. He doesn't really like having fun, you know. And so the taxi driver takes him there, but she kind of gives them the free ride, except when like Sexton was like, "Are you really just gonna do that? Like taxi drivers don't do it." She's like, well, "I'll do it free for her. If you really want to fight me on it, that'll be 60 quid." It's like if you just shut your mouth, you would have been fine. But he's like, because for him, it's like he's like, "Wow, is that how it is? Like you get to just live for free?" She's like, "Living is never free, Sexton, and not for me because it always comes with a price, you know, and that price is time because there's never, it feels like it's never enough. But no matter how long you live, whether it's 25 years, whether it's 60 years, or whether it's 12,000 years, it never feels like it's enough." But they run into Amelia, and I love that he has to introduce her as, "This is my friend Dee Dee, who also knows about Sylvia." And it's like, "Wait, how do you know about Sylvia?" "Yeah, your ex." It's like, "Wait, how do you know?" It's like, "Yeah, it's kind of creepy and weird that she knows so much about you." And so they kind of drag like Sexton inside, even though he didn't want to go in there because the place reminds him too much of Sylvie, because it's a reminder of this being Sylvie's scene is a reminder of why it's not my scene and why we probably broke up, because she felt like, and once again that kind of deals with his like very like negative perspective on the world, because it's like, he even says later on, "I kind of am able to forget for a little while all the suffering that's happening every moment of every day," and it's like, you have that little escape every once in a while, but it's like when you inundate yourself and you drown yourself in it, there's always something terrible happening in the world. The world is slowly dying because of what we do. There's terrible shit happening around the world every single moment of every day, but it's just like there's some things you can't really do about it and you feel powerless. But it's like if you stay with that thought, it can paralyze you. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I think I've had a family member go through that recently, where they kind of got essentially like stuck in like, for a while it was kind of scary because they were just kind of inundated with like this dread of like the world. Like they kind of took so much of it on in themselves, and it was just like they're better now, but I think a lot of stuff was just compounding inside of their head, and just like they were just like legitimately drowning in dread. And it was a scary moment. So like I take a little bit of like, what Sexton was going through, and kind of it seemed applicable with this particular family member. So I just thought that was just, it kind of got me thinking about that. Along the way, he ends up meeting Jackie, who does seem like she's taking an interest in Sexton, but he's kind of not, he doesn't have that view on, because he's just so trapped inside himself right now. And, and even like Death and Amelia had this conversation about him being miserable. And even she's like, "Yeah, I know." She's like, I was pretty much like that too until I met... No, it was Billy, sorry. Billy's like, "Yeah, I was like that until I met Amelia." And she's like, "I know she's not the answer for everything, but it's kind of nice having someone by your side to kind of go through life, to kind of make that bright spot in your life, to be like, yeah, there's good in life, and you don't just only focus on the negative." And it's like, yeah, that's people for you, like the connection to people and people in general. It's like, yeah, it's very nice in that capacity. So I thought that was beautiful. And even Sexton, like, making things good between Amelia and Billy by telling Amelia, like, "No, Billy really likes you." It's like, it isn't just about, like, the fact is, I've known Billy since our uni days, and, like, she doesn't just have sex with anyone. So, like, the fact is she wants to, it's like, no, that's proof of, like, that's her way of being like, "Yo, I really like you," because, like, sex is, I guess, never really been, like, having sex with people is just never her thing. So, like, her wanting to have sex a lot is just being like, "Yo, I want to keep you to myself." And it's like, oh, he was also like, "Don't tell Billy I told you that, because she'll probably kill me for it." But also there was this moment between him and Jackie I thought was... and I figured that's where the story was going to go. The moment she's like, "Oh yeah, like I have this friend who was, taken advantage of by not only her father, but her father's friends. And her father has this position, and one of the people that abused her is also a cop, so she felt like she had nowhere to go. And she's like, yeah, like she like go hang out with her father, and they go fishing or whatever. That'd be the story that'd be told when he, is abusing her. And one day she took a knife, went into the toilet, and cut her wrist, and she woke up in a hospital. And she's like, like even in that moment when she woke up, her dad was sitting there terrified that she'd tell anyone the truth about what happened. She was still glad to be alive. And you see that Sexton looks at her arms, the very vintage things that she's wearing to cover up the scars on her arm, and you're like, wow, that's a dark story. But there's the silver lining that she's still here despite that. And I think that's kind of important, that like she is happy to be alive despite what she went through and tried to take herself out, which obviously Sexton needed to hear that story too, considering this was the day he was going to try and do a similar thing. So I think it was the right time for that to happen. He ends up running into Theo, who's friends with Sylvie. The club is kind of Theo's, and he seems like a right prick because he kind of throws shade at Sexton, because who knows like what his relationship seems, because he's in a relationship with someone named Natalie, but his relationship is also like, it seems like they're fluid in regards of like, oh, like he does his thing while Natalie does hers. So I don't know if there's ever been like a hookup with Sylvie, but Sexton's perspective on it is like, you're the type of guy that's terrible. You basically get people hooked on stuff. So I guess like Sylvie's thing is like she likes to party and have fun, and he's probably like I hook people up with type of things. Or in Sexton's mind is like, you get people hooked on things and you're not a great person. And he's like, and he throws shade at Sexton, being like, oh yeah, like I heard from only thing I've heard about you is from Sylvie. So he constantly brings up Sylvie. So I don't know if they have fun or whatever. I'm actually surprised we never actually met Sylvie in this episode, but I guess it's like all this stuff like surrounding her, and I guess like that's the point, just to kind of make you kind of feel, I guess to some extent, how Sexton feels without actually having to meet her or see her. It's just kind of like she's this X factor that you're hearing about, and all this stuff tangentially connected to her around him. I should have figured that something was up, but I thought it was just Theo being like super interested in Dee Dee and stuff like that, even though once again he has a girlfriend and stuff. But when he took an interest in her Ankh, and he's like, oh, it represents death, and she's like, no, it represents immortality. And it ended up being that conversation, with him about, it's like, oh, the ancient Egyptians, they wanted immortality. She's like, some did, and she's like, some were smart enough to know they didn't. And he's like, oh, but who wouldn't want to be immortal, to be able to do whatever you want? But she knows herself what that means and the cost that comes with being immortal, where it's just kind of like the finiteness of life is important, and maybe that's a lesson and a point that Hobb will reach one day, But to be fair, I mean, he did live life as a regular person. I mean, his version of immortality is very different than the Endless's version of immortality, so that is also a thing to be considered as well. I mean, once again, that's one of the few beings that has had their deal with death, the bet between Dream and her. So I also felt something was sketchy when Theo was like, yes, Sexton can come with us too. And I'm like, what's this about to turn into? I was like, is this going to turn into some freaky sex thing? And then he takes her Ankh, and then it turns out he tried to, like, he was specifically petitioning her to come here. And it's like, he's like, right, with this, I'll get to decide who lives or dies. And she's like, it doesn't work that way. He's like, well, you better hope it does. I was like, yo, what's going on here? And they go further in the room, and it turns out she's like, oh my God, he summoned me here. I was like, that's kind of interesting. This being like technically the last episode of the series, but it's a side story. When you think about what was the first episode, how did this series start, in the confines of the story, it was Roderick and them trying to summon death, but got Dream instead. And now someone has successfully summoned death, So you're like, wow, it's interesting bringing that kind of full circle in that capacity. And, her being like, oh yeah, I got cocky, I thought everything was fine. It's almost that she's kind of got that perspective of, you make plans, man makes plan, God laughs type of thing. Because she's like, I should have just enjoyed the day. I should have let it just kind of take me as it goes, instead of like putting all these expectations on the day. And it's like, now I'm here. Because she also feels like she's letting down Hetty, because she's like, I've only got a couple hours left until my day is up, and it's like that means I will have not done what Hetty asked me to do, and she deserves to be able to have her soul, and it's just like it for her. It sucks because for her it's like I will have my duties as death, and I won't have the time necessary, and I won't be able to find her soul because I won't be able to wander earth because I'll be here as death, and so I'll have a different relationship with the waking world, the living world, versus here as a human. I can do that. That's why Hetty did this now. Like, hey, I need to ask someone to do it. You're the best person to do it, considering you're here on Earth and you're a human. So this is the one time I could beseech one of the endless to do something for me, where they're in a position to actually be able to do something about it. Well, I mean, once again, we don't know where this is storyline wise, so like, she might not be too much. Dream might not be in her. I mean, depending on what dream it is, they once again, it probably has to specifically be her. Even the others probably can't help her in this regard because of her being human at the moment. And then her and Sexton had the whole conversation about, like I said, that kind of external dread that he kind of has, and just like how terrible like life is and can be, and it just makes it kind of harder to live and stuff. So, and that being terrified, but for death, she says like that's what's important. Like she's like, you don't know what it's like to not live with that. Like to be able to even experience that is good, because yes, like not all of life is bad. There are bright spots. There is goodness in it. But like even experiencing the bad stuff, it is part of life. But to be able to feel that at all is something that you should cherish, because she's like, you don't know what it's like to not feel that at all. Because she stops him from like, okay, the moment Theo comes back here, I'm a whack him. It's like, no, that might kill him. And he's like, are you really deaf? She's like, I don't go around killing people. Her job is like, right, death happens regardless of me, but my function is to be that helping hand. She wants to be that. She goes out of her way to be that person, that friendly person that sits beside you, stands beside you, and helps you, go off into whatever's next. And so initially, like, he's putting these marbles down, trying to, like, and even Def's asking, like, oh, are you trying to save my life or yours? He's like, preferably both. She's like, oh, you want to live, huh? It's kind of interesting considering how the day started, right? And he's like, what are you talking about? She's like, the sleeping pills. You were trying to kill you. She's like, I'm not judging you, but the fact is that we're here right now means you want to live, and how hard you're fighting, not only for me, but for you to live as well. I think that kind of shows what this day has kind of been meant for him. It's kind of interesting how much a day can change. It kind of leans into that perspective where it's like what you're going through right now and what you're feeling is temporary. So don't take a permanent solution. Don't take something, what you consider to be a permanent solution for a temporary problem, and that, because that feeling you're feeling, you won't always feel that way. You won't, and see in this regard of like what one day, hanging out, ironically enough, with death can do. But Theo came in and saw what they were up to, and I was like, oh, it's one of them about to die in this moment. But yeah, the thing he's trying to do, why he was like summoning death, is because Natalie died. She overdosed, and he thought like, no, I gave her the stuff, and he's like, I'm gonna spend the rest of my life in prison. People are gonna blame me. He's like, I already know you blame me, Sex, and I'm sure you're thinking like I'm the reason why she died. But it's like even Death tried to tell him like, no, it's not your fault. It's just she overindulged, and that's the reality of it. He's like, the fact of the matter is, she's like, you tried to do everything to bring her back, and he's like, I need you to do it now. But it's like, it doesn't work that way. And so when Sexton tried to get close to him, he backed up, and funny enough, still slips on the marbles, and it goes the way there was supposed to. Granted, the bullet fired, and I was like, oh, did Def get hit? Did he get hit? It's like, no, they're both fine. I was like, oh. I thought like, at best, I thought like Dee Dee, rather, was going to die in that moment, because, well, she's going to die at the end of the day. So I thought that's what was going to happen. I figured like there's always going to be some cosmic kind of final destination thing to like lead to her death. But I thought that's where it was going to go, but it plays out differently. We'll get there in a second. But Saxton goes to get some help, and then he's talking to Death, and he's like, are you here to claim me? And she's like, no, it's my day off. And he's like, then are you going to bring her back to me? And it's like, I can't. Once they're gone, they're gone, you know. And once again, it's important storyline wise too to think about that too, because her own brother is gone. You know, she kind of ended up being there for her brother. And then once again, she isn't the end all be all of death. It is just she's there to be the middleman for death. She's the face of the operation, but she's not like the orchestrator of it. Once again, she doesn't kill people. She's just there when their time is up. She's there to kind of lead them on their way, guide them. The two of them are, wandering by themselves, and they come across like this jewelry, because I think it was Theo said he threw her ankh in the bottom of the water, because that way, like, Death won't be able to. But it's, once again, that doesn't mean anything. Like, death is still going to happen even without her being there to arbitrate it necessarily. But yeah, she comes across an ankh. I thought it was going to be the thing of, I thought it was kind of being like Orpheus's earring. He said, like, no matter what happens, it always finds its way back to him. So I thought, like, maybe that's kind of what it was. But then Death was like, no, like, you want 30 quid for it? And he probably would have given it to her for free until, once again, Sexton opened his mouth. But he's like, 30 quid. She only has 20 pounds and 2 pence, I believe. And he was like, all right, just give me what you got. And she takes this locket thing. And you're like, why did she take that? Is she replacing it for her ankh or what? But he's like, no. She's trying to enjoy the last little bit of time she has left, and just how wonderful it all is. Once again, you always wish there was more, so you're just trying to take it in, and it's just like that last moment. Even she's at that, even her knowing what's coming, it still doesn't make it any easier, because she's begging. She's like, please, just a little bit more. And she dies from a heart attack. And so Hetty comes and it's like, yeah, it's her time. And the 2 pences that she had left that she gave to Sexton, you put it on her eyes, and obviously those are the price, because you across the river Styx. That's what the coins on the eyes are supposed to be, your payment to the ferryman across the river Styx. And ultimately, the pendant ended up being Hetty's soul, back from when she was Henrietta, and that was her daughter. And it's like, I think it's like the literal personification of her soul, but it's also like the thing that she cherishes, because it's probably the only thing she's able to keep from her life back in the day as Henrietta, because so much of it is gone. So to have this physical reminder of what she had is just kind of a token of like the life she lived and what she had. It's like, as long as you keep the memory of something and someone alive, then they're never truly gone. It's that type of mentality, I think. But yeah, it's like, yeah, she Death will get her shot in another 100 years. Sadly she'll have to wait that long, but what's 100 years for the endless, right? Because Hetty was like, yeah, I wish she was still here, because I could ask her where's a good place to hide it where no one will find it. But it's like, I'll ask her in like another 100 years maybe. So that was beautiful. And also, that being the thing Death was able to do. So much did happen and was important in this day. Like, I think her being here ended up helping so many people, because it put Sexton on his path, and all that led to Theo getting help, amending things between Billy and Amelia, that, something nice happened there. But also, Sexton's still alive today, and so later on, after the paramedics took her away, because I was curious, like, well, what happens to her body? Does it just like randomly disappear from a morgue, or does she get buried? Like, how does that work? I guess like that body will just randomly like decay and disappear, and then just another body will just happen to look like it 100 years from now. But no one will know. It would just be some Jane Doe that sadly gets buried, and no one would know. But Sexton will remember, because him and Billy and Amelia and Theo all interacted with her. I thought that was interesting. And, Billy's takeaway from it was, well, what if Dee Dee actually was Death? And he's like, I think it'd be nice if she was, that someone as kind and as funny as her. And it's like, once again, that's the point. That's why she is the way she is, to make it easier for people. And that's the thing, like, you won't Hopefully, it'll be a while before you get to meet again, but you two will meet again. You know, it won't be for a long time, but you'll be able to sit down with her and see her again and be like, wow, you really were deaf. You know, it's kind of nice knowing that, you know, there is a reunion in your future, you know, and you'd be like, holy crap, it was you. And it was because of her and that experience he had that day that he was there to live his life and glad to be alive, just like Jackie, which both stories collide together because Amelia and Jackie come over to, you know, check on Sexton, and he deletes the note he was going to leave, and he just asks, you know, her like, oh, what do you want? And he's like, oh, would you like a cup of tea? He's like, sugar, milk, sugar. She's like, 3 sugars. Funny enough, that came up earlier in the episode. I want to say it was specifically for Dee Dee's, and I think that's also why he smiled. So kind of, you know, this very sweet and hopeful ending. Once again, Superman, Sigil, House of El Sigil all around kind of playing into that. But I just thought that was kind of nice. And then wrapping things up with, you know, like I said, the scene between Death and Death. And, you know, it's like, how was it? And she's like, oh, it was wonderful. Like, was it worth it? And she's just like, it was absolutely worth it. So, and just that kind of being like the last touch of the episode and just a smile across Death's face with that. Just, I thought that was just kind of just, once again, it's just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful episode. And it just kind of like what you can kind of take away from that, just kind of like appreciating life and stuff like that. It's always nice when a story's able to kind of like leave you with that feeling and that lesson, I guess you could say. Yeah, man, I'm sad that this is all we get. I mean, even though, once again, like not all, but most of the comic was adapted. At least most of the main story was adapted. We didn't get every side story adapted. For the most part, like, we got the stories adapted at, you know, for the most part, you know, and, you know, and I'm glad we got one more episode. It's sad because now it's like, yeah, it's over. There's always going to be the comic, but even the comics ended, you know, so like, you know, so, but it's still like, the endings matter because it kind of makes the whole journey worthwhile, because it's like it only has its meaning when it comes to an end, you know, and endings are okay, you know. Endings are beautiful, even though I'm the main proponent of I never want anything to end. So, you know, and once again, that's very human nature, you know, very human of me in that perspective. But endings can be beautiful because it ends up bookending and defining, you know, the meaning of a life, you know, that a life was lived, you know, and every life lived, you know, was, you know, it's all worth it living life. I don't know. I'm trying not to get all too sappy, but it's like, yeah, just like the concept and just things about the show get inside. You get very heady and just kind of like, I don't know, get you a little, I mean, especially in relation to death, it kind of gets you all sappy and stuff. But yeah, I'm going to stop here. I already said it in the previous episode, but I'm going to reiterate it here. Once again, thank you to everyone behind the show, from top to bottom, cast and crew, those in front of the camera, behind the camera. Thank you, everyone involved, for this great series. Once again, certain people, you know, who shall not be named type of situation, you know, on the comic side of things. But even on that front, it's still kind of like a, you know, it's great that this piece of literature exists, to have, you know, tell the stories it told. And even though I'm not familiar with that version of it, to have gotten those stories in this version of, you know, with this adaptation. So, you know, want to be thankful in that capacity. And everyone involved, I wish them the best in their future endeavors, whatever they may be. But yes, I've run my mouth off long enough for the final time when it comes to Sandman. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.